And we are live. We were live once before, and now we're live once again. We are in the midst of round two of the two-round evening double feature. We were here earlier tonight with Ryan, or Brom Bones, as he likes to call himself, for 2007's Wreck, which I always enjoy talking. And Eric, based on what you said, right before we went on, I ordered 3 and 4. I found copies on Amazon, so they're on their way. And now we are here for round 2 of Halloween Hellfire. We've got from the internet himself. Hey, Internet Eric here is joining us once again, so it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
My pleasure, man.
Hey, always good to have you on, brother. And we have Joe Crow in the house tonight, formerly Johnny Kai's from the neighborhood. He was from the neighborhood last week.
Yeah.
And now he's Joe Crow, just a run-of-the-mill kind of fella.
I'm just a country bumpkin of Joe Kai's.
Average height, average weight, is an average kind of guy. He's just he's playing it that way. So,
average opinion.
Yeah. We're here to talk about kind of a special movie. I saw this overseas a number of years ago, and I had no expectations. And this movie scared me. There was genuine creep going on in this movie. I thought it was very intelligent. I thought it was well, acted by, everybody in there. The creature designs were scary as hell. I mean, they really were like something like out of a child's nightmare. Like you could almost go back into, your nightmares as a child. And personally, I don't remember my dreams. Every once in a while I'll have one that I remember. Or I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh shit, that was really, and then within an hour, I can't remember them for whatever reason. But this actually took me back into, something that was relatable from childhood with these monsters. They were kind of scary, man. And we're talking about scary stories to tell in the dark.
That's right.
So I think we should get it going if you guys are ready.
So ready.
Rock and roll. Rock and roll. So, like I was saying before we went on air, Rod Jean Charles was unable to join us this evening, and he's really sorry about that. And we hope to get him back on the show very, very soon, because I always enjoy Rod's commentary and his suggestion for movies. Usually, Rod picks one, and then I pick one, and we've been doing that back and forth from the get-go. But tonight, this was. Let me read this one review that I pulled off Wiki, and I was saying it's geared towards a younger audience, but yet at the same time, this is appropriately scary for adults too. And here's one review, and I thought that this, when we talk about young people, because it's. Main characters and the protagonists are all high school students.
Right.
But it's not the same kind of horrible thing that you're seeing like in It.
Right.
It's toned down, but because it's toned down, you're not getting that gore, that super hardcore kind of horror. But because you're not getting that, I think that adds extra pressure on making the story good. Because you can't compensate by, sucker punching, by seeing somebody being disemboweled.
Right.
So on and so forth. You have to place your strengths in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this movie succeeds because of that.
Yes.
And here's one off of Rolling Stone, and I forget the name of the writer who wrote it. It said, "It's all a lot of chain rattling, black cat screeching fun, though not such a blast that you don't notice how generic and ramshackle the whole endeavor feels." I did get some reviews and people who said that. I disagree with them, but this review on the whole, I liked. It says, "The pity is that scary stories to tell in the dark will mostly be seen by jaded genre completists and nostalgic 40-somethings. That's us, although I haven't been a 40-something in a couple of years. Because I'm going backwards. I just turned 25. I was telling Eric about 6 months ago. I just turned 25.
I'll be jaded and 40 next week.
Okay. Well, so you've got something to look forward to.
That's right.
I was jaded at 2. So
yeah, well, you were born in Philly.
That's it.
So wrong demographic. It says you owe it to your kids to take them to this. It's training wheels hard done right.
Right.
And while I disagree with what he said about some of it, that ending part really kind of brought it home, and I thought it was chain rattling and black cat screeching fun. But it is something you could take a teenager to.
Exactly.
And sit them down and say, we're going to start. Because, I think today, if you tried to show a kid Todd Browning's Dracula with a Lugosi, I don't think they would get it. No, they're like, this isn't scary. I remember once I was watching Joe Rogan, and I think he had Rob Zombie on or something like that. And he was saying that he showed his kids the original King Kong with Fay Wray. And, I think his one daughter was like 3. And so she was terrified. And he's like, well, he's like coaxing her into it. It's scary, but it's not. And then the big reveal for the monster comes out, and Kong comes out, and they're like, "That's it." Like that's not scary or anything, but like leading up into that, it's very tense. These sorts of things, and then they see it, and they're like, "What? Like what are you talking about?" So I don't think you could start somebody out with Lugosi or with Karloff nowadays. You might be able to get away with starting them out with Christopher Lee.
Maybe.
You might be able to do that. But this, because that's where I started. I started with Lugosi, and then, with my mom, because she was the horror fan, not my dad, and then started me out with the Hammer classics with Peter Cushing, and, all these different, the Invisible Man, and, the Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed, which, still scares me to this day. But this movie for today's generation would be a perfect launching to get them invested in some horror.
I have to admit, when I was looking to see this movie, because I read the books, but I never got to see the movie.
Okay, so it's 2 out of 3. I'm the only person on the panel who hasn't read it.
And I went to look for the movie, and I actually found a documentary. And where they were trying to ban it from a school and things like that. But they went...
Wait, they were trying to ban the books or the movie?
Books.
The book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're banned books, yeah.
Are they really? Oh, shit, now I definitely got to buy them.
Yeah, we'll get into it, Mike, trust me.
Okay.
Remember, I grew up when the books were coming out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was... When they went into a movie review, and one guy said, everyone keeps using this term, it's a gateway to, and it's always in a negative sense. Well, I'm not. This movie is a gateway to other horror movies. You get it in there, and it gives them an idea of what it is. And this movie works really well. Michael, you and I were talking about it a couple of times on different shows that we were on about my friend who, in fact, you can't say it now. I'm wearing a Dracula T-shirt from the show this guy did.
Okay.
And he took the book Dracula and converted it to the Jonathan Harker's point of view, and it was a one-man show.
Okay.
And when he would do talkback, everybody was asking him why he did that, and he said, because I like campfire stories. Where you're sitting around and you're building the atmosphere, and it's all with words. And this movie reminded me of that type show. The guy was saying rattles and chains. I'm thinking cobwebs and ripping through it as you enter into the room. You know, that type deal. It's a wonderful sense of storytelling around the campfire. And that's why I think it works even for adults. Could it be scarier? Yeah, but then you're losing the magic of the storytelling.
Yeah. That's perfectly said, because, like I said, I grew up when the books were coming out. And a little bit of info for you, Mike. First off, just search Tubi for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, that documentary on getting those books published and banned. They were banned because what the books really are, like he said, they're campfire tales. They're like, we've got, urban legends thrown in there, the story of the hook, the hook stuck on the side of the door when the two, the couple's making out at Lover's Lane, they hear scratching, and the guy just escaped from the insane asylum, and he's got a hook for a hand, and they hear the scratching. Those type of campfire tales, the high beam story, or the calls coming from inside the house. But what got these books banned is the illustrations.
Yes.
These illustrations, like I said, just Google some of the stuff, like when I sent you in Twitter.
You sent me a DM so people know what we're talking about. Eric and I were talking around 8 o'clock this evening, and he's like, "Try some of these illustrations," and I dug some up in between. So if you wanna, I can launch into a few of them.
Yeah, they're terrifying.
Yes,
and that's what got them banned, because at the time, you didn't see this type of illustration in a kid's book. And what I loved is the stories themselves, they're kind of spooky, but those pictures are what scared you. And what's great about this film, see right there, that's the story of, there's a reference to it with the female lead in this, what's his name, Ramon. He's looking through her stories and like, oh wow, the dog turned into be a sewer rat.
Yeah,
that's that story there.
Yeah.
But what's great about this movie itself is it toes the line in between, let's say, preteen and adults. We can all like it. A lot of people brush this aside because they thought it was like, they didn't know the stories, the books. Oh, this is just some Goosebumps bullshit. You know what I mean? Goofy stuff. But if you knew the source material, and like I told you through Twitter, when I found out what stories are put into this, I was super excited. And I think they hit a home run with tone, look, everything.
I personally enjoyed this, and I thought this was better, and this is sort of an unfair comparison or an extremely uneven comparison, but I enjoyed this a lot more than I usually enjoy a season of Stranger Things. This seemed to have more purpose. It had more clarity. You'd think usually with 8 or 10 episodes, however many are usually, and like I watched the entire second season of Stranger Things, and I remember finishing it. I'm like, nothing happened. Like nothing happened in that whole season. You were waiting for something to happen, and it never did, and then it ended, and you're like, I'm confused. Like what did they just do there?
Right.
It was like they were just selling on the fact that it was Stranger Things, and the first season was a hit. So they thought that they could give you this diluted sort of, inference that this like Lovecraftian kind of thing was coming out of the sky, which they never developed. I mean, this was very clear. It was purposeful. It was sequential. You were invested in these characters. You couldn't have made it too hardcore because you would have lost the innocence of it.
Right.
It walked a very fine line. And it sort of went right down the middle. It was right down on one side was this childlike sort of innocence, and on the other side there was some genuine horror there.
And that's the problem with Stranger Things. I think they have cool imagery, like with the Lovecraftian stuff. I think they just bank too much on, oh, hey, guess what? It's in the 80s. Guess what?
Yeah.
Hey, you remember Ghostbusters? Ghostbusters was cool, and then by season 3 it gets even worse. Even less happens in season 3. And you get beat over the head even more with 80 stuff.
Yeah,
now
like,
with
why
this,
God, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, but with this is a period piece. Right. But other than they're always bringing up like Vietnam and Nixon, but other than that, it's not thrown in your face. It's in the late '60s, but you can tell that because of the clothes. The cars, just the look of it. You don't have to be like, hey, guess what? It's 1968 or 69 every 5 freaking minutes.
Yeah.
Like in, hey, you remember, Back to the Future when it came out, when Stranger Things shows it or stuff like that.
They
When they
mentioned
had
they mentioned Vietnam in the movie, but it's in
Mhm.
the background. It's always, which to me actually adds not just to the atmosphere of the movie, but the sense of the time. I mean, in 1960, 68, 69, when this is said, you were seeing war on television a lot on the news that you don't normally see. That sense of seeing the horror of war, the horror of this. Hey, there's a horror in the backyard. We're not paying attention to it. Type deal, which is what I kind of like too, because that kind of slid it right under the radar for most of the town folk. Type deal.
it was impressive in the sense that it starts out checking off all the small town American boxes.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the dorks. You're focusing on the dorks, and the dorks have found their own little community, and they've got these two guys and the one girl, and they're so I don't want to say that they're such dorks that they're not interested in the one girl who hangs out with them, but they're such dorks that they're not interested in the one girl who hangs out with them. This might be their only. Like it just goes right over their head.
Exactly.
Like there's one girl in the world that actually loves to spend time with them, and neither of them either. Because they're too busy collecting turds out of the toilet to like prank. The douchebag jock. Who just terrorized it. It's got like all the cliches, and yet somehow you don't mind it.
It's funny that I'm gonna follow this, what I'm gonna say, up with the fact that you're talking about how they're collecting turds in a toilet. But the fact that those three dorks, as we're calling them, the two guys who don't know that they could maybe have a shot with the girl, but they don't take it. To me, that's kind of endearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes them. Because the thing is, these three, we'll just call them the dorks until Ramon shows up.
Right.
They're very likable.
Yes,
like so you have the girl. She's the brains.
Stella.
You have the, I guess you say, the comic relief. The one who's got the older sister who he was a Spider-Man instead of Spider-Man. You know what I mean? No, this was Augie was the one that was taken by the toe.
Okay.
So he was the one. So this is the other one. But I was worried, is he going to be too over the top? No, his jokes, I think, hit when they needed to hit.
Yeah.
He wasn't obnoxious, because I was worried when we were following teens, how obnoxious are these kids going to be? And Augie, he's
innocent.
Yeah. And Augie, he's the one that they kept saying he looked like a clown when he was like some French character or something like that.
Yeah.
He was, he was kind of the wet blanket, I guess you would say it, but he was still very, very likable. So there wasn't, in these three, anyone you would hate to follow for the whole hour and 45 minutes if we were stuck with all three of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that I just want to say real quick one last thing about Stranger Things, because I lost my train of thought the last time I spoke. What really drove me over the edge was when I had to listen to them sing the never-ending story.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We get it. It's the 80s.
Are you really going to make me sit through this? Now, when we come back to this, now I've lost my train of thought because I'm thinking of the never-ending story.
I've never seen an episode of Stranger Things.
The first season is fire, man.
The first season is good.
The first season is fire, and then it just sort of falls apart afterwards. Although it's always nice to see Winona Ryder.
Yes.
So this is checking out all the small town boxes. The dorks in high school, and you've got the jock alcoholic douchebag, who just goes around and bullies and steals people's Halloween candy.
Ass, man.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got the old muscle car, and so these dorks decide to sort of rebel a little bit and get some like high powered revenge by essentially allowing the guys to steal their bag of candy. And then refresh my memory. How does the do they throw the flaming bag of shit at them
they're waiting for the muscle car to come by, and they're holding out the bag of
Right.
candy.
Yeah, pretending
And they
that
come
they're
and
not paying
snatch it.
attention.
They come and
Yeah.
snatch it, and as they're looking through, something smells bad, but it's not. I think they say like it's like old man underwear, so I think they like stole their dad's jock shorts or something like that.
Right.
And then that once they see what's inside, they hit the brakes. Then they start throwing eggs at the car, and then that's when he lights the flaming bag of shit and hawks it, and I think it lands in his sister's lap on accident because he doesn't know his sister is dating, the lead asshole. So it's a great sequence. It's so much fun.
It is. Yeah, and if anything, that makes him even more endearing. Because they're trying their best to stand up to this asshole, who's probably just gonna plow him over anyway. But at least,
how many years has this asshole stolen candy from him?
Yeah. He says it happens every year, so they knew the exact spot to stand.
Yeah,
it was great. It was calculated.
So they end up getting chased, and you get introduced to the Ramon character. They end up jumping in his car in the middle of the drive. He's like, "Hey, what the hell are you guys doing? You're just jumping in my car, and it,
And then you see them show up, and Ramon's all of a sudden the hero.
Well, yeah, because one, he sort of stands up to the assholes because he's not 16 or 17. He's probably 19. He's a little bit older. He's probably not going to be scared of some some asshole with like his varsity letter on, this kind of thing. But at the same time, there's a bit of nastiness too. They're like calling him a wetback.
Yeah, they paint on his car.
They're just. These guys, these people aren't really pleasant. They aren't like the comedic kind of bully. I mean, there's some ugliness in there, So, eventually they kind of get run off, and then they end up taking Ramon to a haunted house.
Yes.
So, I mean, what do you guys?
Of course, it's the cute redheaded girl with the big glasses who says, "Hey, we're going to a haunted house."
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you want to because she knows he's obviously not from around here, so she's. Right. I mean, what are they also going to? They can't hide in this car all night. So hey, we got a local legend. Let's come. You want to see a real spooky house? See a haunted house? And he's like, well, I got nothing better to do. But one thing I want to say about this lead bully is again, he's this actor is great. He's not over the top, but he's still menacing. But I also like how a lot of the times he's in over his head and he doesn't realize it. Because the first time, I don't know if you guys noticed it, the first time we see this guy, he's coming out of the recruitment office and he's high-fiving. He's saying, yeah, I'm going to Vietnam. And he has no idea. Like, he's so oblivious to the outside world. Yeah. He's only in his own world. So that's what I kind of like about him, because it kind of shows how conceited he is and how big he is on himself. You know what I mean?
And when you understand, on the flip side of that, Ramon, who fully understands what's happening in Vietnam because he's just lost his brother several months ago, and says, essentially his brother came home in pieces.
Yep.
And so for that reason, he's sort of skirting the draft. And I hate to talk politics for a second, but I'm trying to imagine what it must have been like back then, to under a national draft. You're going, nowadays, that would be, inconceivable. And so we have, kind of our 1%, and, I guess there are various opinions as to whether the draft worked or it didn't, but that's rough. I mean, you're 18 years old and suddenly you just get that notice in the mail, and, like he said, I just can't, I just watched my brother come home and, in pieces a couple of months ago.
I kind of related to Ramon just a little bit because my dad was a Vietnam vet. Yeah. And he went in from 70 to 72 and he was 18. Yeah. So there's that old thing, they don't say what happened type of thing. So, but I knew it was bad stuff. And so I kind of felt for Ramon because I knew in a roundabout way what he would be going into. So I also felt for him, for his brother, and then why he was dodging the draft.
Yeah. Yeah, it's relatable. It's human. It's relatable and it's human. So, but we get back to the haunted house, and one of the things, and I couldn't find an overlay for it, they sort of get separated in the house, and then we get to the old lady and the dog.
Right.
that he sees from the cupboard. And that was, I mean, even because I watched it a bit of it last night and I watched a little, finished it up today. That was scary.
Right.
That was scary. That whole thing where he's just watching it like an image, and then all of a sudden the old lady just kind of turns and looks at him.
Right.
And very smart with their scares in this movie.
Right.
Yeah, and there's just so much uncertainty because she's not lunging or doing anything over the top. And John, you and I have been talking about this many times about, how, to do nothing and make it look interesting.
Exactly.
And that lady she's just sitting there on the bed, not doing a thing. The dog is just sitting there looking like right at, one of the kids. And it's just scary as hell.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the creepiest things that I ever went through in a haunted house that I helped set up was where I had a guy dressed as a clown, sitting in a rocking chair, and all he did was.
And
when people
back and forth,
they were busting his chops and everything else, and that's all he did. And everybody shut up and started watching him.
Yeah,
because they were waiting for that, and they didn't know what to do. And then he turned his head, and they all jumped. He didn't even get out of the chair, and they jumped. I love moments like that, like the lady with the dog. It's in the distance, and all of a sudden, oh shit, she's watching me.
Yeah.
And that's just brilliant storytelling. Just letting them not even having dialogue to tell or set up the fear.
Genuinely creepy scene.
And that's one of the things I genuinely liked about this movie, because they could have gone overblown CGI.
They could have gone overblown CGI. It could have easily been some goosebump shit, because up until now, everything's been very lighthearted.
Right.
And then all of a sudden with that one thing, it just turns, and you're about 20 minutes in. Waiting for something to happen here, because that's what I was expecting almost. I was almost expecting like some lighthearted, goosebumpy kind, which isn't my type of thing. But I was overseas, and I was like, okay, well, Guillermo del Toro's invested in this,
right?
And that was what sold me, because he's one of the main producers here. And then I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, this isn't a bad story. And then all of a sudden, it just turns on, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, okay, yeah, that was freaky. Okay, I'm awake now. Yeah.
And they banked on Del Toro's name, and I think that's what helped. I think this was just like a moderate success.
Yeah.
But it was successful enough we're supposedly going to get a sequel.
It's officially in production.
Great.
It's officially underway.
This was, I don't know if Del Toro had won the Oscar yet, but his name was already out. He's already a big name.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is producing a movie, and that dude knows his visuals.
Right.
And that's what got me excited as a fan of the illustrations of the books.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, game on.
See, that's the great thing about Del Toro, and I forget where we were discussing this. Maybe it was, I'm not going to say that movie that I keep naming nowadays, but we were talking about Del Toro, and we were saying that the director, the other director, is like Del Toro. Now we are talking about Del Toro, and that he's a fanboy of his own work.
Right.
Like you can tell he just like Del Toro gives a shit.
Yeah.
He's not on some sort of career track. He's only taking the projects that he wants to deeply invest in, and he puts everything into them. So I knew nothing about these books or illustrations. What sold me to go see it was Del Toro's name. And here we are, talking about it now.
Instead of many mediocre, like other directors sometimes do, Del Toro is few, but they're fabulous.
Yeah.
I really can't I saw a great documentary on him and on this movie. Their mantra was 90% practical, 10% magical. There was some things they had to do.
Yep.
Not to jump. I'm trying not to jump ahead, but there's the one creature who turns the body and everything else.
The Jangly Man.
That wasn't CGI. They got a contortionist from I forget what the Cirque du Soleil.
Yep.
To do that movements and everything else to freak people out.
Yeah, they said the only CGI was the face. The whole body. That's a real man.
Yeah.
Or woman, I don't really know, but it's a real contortionist moving around just like that.
I'll be honest. What sold me right away was Harold.
Yes.
Harold sold me.
Yes,
It's
Harold
just,
Mike is probably the most. He doesn't show up. He's only one story, and he doesn't show up until the third book. And Harold is probably the most. If you mention scary stories to tell in the dark to anyone my age who grew up with it, I guarantee you. There, look at that. I guarantee you, 99.9% will first say Harold because of that image and the story. The story is very subtle. Harold. It's about two farmers, and they're down on their luck, and Harold is their scarecrow, and he takes the abuse from them. They weren't able to. They spilled the milk, on Tuesday when they were milking the cows, so they beat up Harold to take out their frustrations. Well, eventually Harold comes to life and takes vengeance. I'll leave it at that. But Harold is probably the most popular story in the whole trilogy. And when I heard Harold, like, he'd have to be in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they're gonna pick a story, and I'm like. And then when you see him on the poster, I'm like, okay.
I was about to say, if you look at the poster and everything else, Harold's the face of the franchise. He's like,
yes, he really is.
And
like I said, he doesn't even come until book 3, and that's the final chapter, of the trilogy.
And there's like other illustration things, like, and I'm going to dumb it down a little bit, but like Charlie Brown or Peanuts. Yeah, Charlie Brown's the main character, but Snoopy is the face of the franchise.
True.
I can't remember Opus County or Bloom County. There were all these other people that were this and this and this, but it's Opus the Penguin that's the face of the franchise. It's Harold's it, man. I read the books. I saw a guy wearing a T-shirt of Harold.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Oh, that would be a cool T-shirt.
It was a white T-shirt with his image on it, and I'm looking at him, and he's staring at me. I said, "Dude, I'm sorry. I don't know what this is." And he goes, "It's Harold." And that's all he said. I went,
yep.
And then when I found the book and saw it, I'm like, of course it's Harold. There you go.
He's just, when you first see him just sitting there, hanging on that, on that pole, it's just, the face is just so expressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's looking at you with disdain.
Disgust, yeah.
Yeah. Like he just wants to come down off there and slap the shit out of you, like he's like, you motherfucker, you're sitting there smacking me around. And
here comes Tommy with his bat again. Yep.
Yeah, and he's just going to beat me up and, do these sorts of things. And he's just looking at you with this look like, if I come down from there, you better run.
Well, look at the eyes, too, see? Yeah. And that's what's great. Like, Tommy didn't just beat him with a bat. He says, like, eat shit, Harold, and, like, walks away.
And the thing is, also, Tommy's afraid of Harold.
Mm-hmm.
That's I had to it, too. And to me, so when Harold does come down, that's the other thing. Forget the fact it's just Scarecrow coming down and chasing me through the cornfields. Oh, shit, it's Harold. And I hit him with a bat.
Yeah, because that's not something you see very often used in horror, a scarecrow. We know, like Cillian Murphy, the Scarecrow, and the Batman things. But the only thing I could think of off the top of my head, other than this, was from the second Jeepers Creepers movie, where he's just hanging there like that scarecrow, and he actually has taken the place of the scarecrow, but the kid doesn't realize it at first. And he's
I always think of House of a Thousand Corpses when Bill Moseley is dressed as the scarecrows as the group is trying to leave the house, and they're dressed as scarecrows to attack them in the car. That's a terrifying moment in the rain.
Okay, yeah. You're absolutely right about that. That movie's
I've watched a lot of different horror or science fiction films, but I noticed when they use a scarecrow, or television shows even, when they use a scarecrow, if it's done right, it stays with me for days. Christ, they used a scarecrow in Doctor Who one time, and it freaked me out for days, type deal, because just the way they used it. Because it is. If you look at it, what the scarecrow's for? You just throw them in to try to scare off birds. We're more terrified of people.
Hold on, we got some comments here, and somebody, Half Cheetah will view Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. I haven't seen that one.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone brings that up. It's like it was a made-for-TV movie in the '80s with Larry Drake, I believe.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to look into Dark Knight of the Sky. Okay, I'll have to take a look. All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in.
Yeah. Hey, Patrick.
What's up, brother? It's been a little bit.
Man,
Yeah,
every Halloween when I worked at the zoo, I used to come on a different makeup because all my theater friends would make up my face.
Mhm.
Last year I did it. I came in dressed as a scarecrow, and people kept calling me Harold. And I didn't know.
See?
And I wasn't looking like Harold. I was looking like,
Right.
and the kids are saying, when they see scarecrows, they're not calling them scarecrows, they're calling them Harold.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
And Patrick saying, hey, back.
Hey, bud.
So, thanks for stopping in, my man. I haven't seen you in a little bit. I think I caught you on a couple of the other streams. We were in the comments together. But I can't remember where. It's been a little bit. Okay, so what essentially happens here, they find the book, which seems to write itself. Sarah Bellows, is that her name?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sarah Bellows, they find who is this character, who was a greatly wronged character. I don't know how much I want to get into this with too much of the backstory.
Okay.
Is that part of the? I mean, when you read the books, are they not connected in this way? Are there just random stories in the?
Sarah is kind of an homage to the story called The Haunted House,
Right.
Okay.
which is about a person. I don't know if it's a young female and someone's with her, and they're trying to see if a spirit can be put to rest, type of thing.
Right.
Okay.
And when you see the image, like I said, just Google "scary stories to tell in the dark," a haunted house. With when they see the spirit, Sarah Bellows, she looks, air quotes, semi-normal.
Right.
This creature has no eyes in the eye sockets. It's truly a terrifying image. But what they're trying to do is that's basically the homage, is trying to put the spirit to rest. The story, other than that, is completely different. But that's kind of how they're hooking Sarah into the movie.
That's how they're putting it all together. So each of these stories at that point starts to, unfold. I guess based on the stories from the books. So they're intertwining these various stories from the various books into this story, saying that the Sarah Bellows character is writing them.
Yeah.
And taking revenge on the three dorks and Ramon for taking her book out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we start off with, there's Harold. We start off with Harold. Harold kills Tommy and basically disembowels him with a pitchfork. And then he transforms himself into a scarecrow, and watching him start to spit up straw.
Yeah. Him trying to vomit up straw. That was pretty brutal, I thought, for what I wasn't expecting in this type of movie.
Yeah.
Brutal imagery.
Yeah. What is the rating on this? Does anybody remember?
PG-13.
Was it PG-13? It's a rough PG-13 though. It's right there on the edge. Like I said, it's right there on the. You're walking that fine line. Right in between the middle.
They were pushing the boundaries, man. Let's see how far we can take it.
They were going for it. I mean, let's just put it out there. They were going for it. After that, I guess we get to the big toe.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Story. Let me see what I was able to. Yeah. And the stew. And this awful monster who's trying to get her big toe back, which the concept of itself is just kind of gross.
Right.
Yeah, the story is really gross. It's about this little boy who he's farming. The picture is just a little boy with like a garden hoe. And he pulls a toe out of his garden or whatever, takes it home. It's like throwing a bone in the stew to make it taste better. They say, "Oh, this will be good in the stew." The whole family eats. They share. They cut it up. They eat the toe, whatever. And then it's one of those stories that you're reading to like your kids, because after you get past the gross stuff, you start hearing the creature saying, "Where's my toe?" And then I think the author even says it how to read it to your kid, because at the very
scare the shit out of your kid.
Yeah, because what's great is with this story. Is it says at the end, instead of like "Where's my toe?" it's like "Who has my toe?" In the very last line, the author, Elvin Schwartz, says, you reach for whoever you're reading to and you yell, "You've got it," and grab them. And that's the end of the story.
Oh,
Right.
God.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you want your kids sleeping with you for the next 6 months, okay.
I know.
Yeah,
that's amazing shit. And that's why you can see.
I laughed my ass off.
That's why you can see why they were too scary and banned, if not just for the illustrations.
Yeah.
At the time, at least.
Patrick says there's a fine documentary called Scary Stories. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, released on Wide Eye. Patrick says it's on, Eric says it's on Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
It is PG-13. So, but what I thought was really remarkable about this movie was that it started to take the main characters off the board.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what separated it from something like from Stranger Things.
Right.
Which you're pretty much assured of from the get-go. Nothing's going to happen to those knuckleheads.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire time, because it's not
right.
It's not in the makeup of, that tone and that kind of writing. But immediately, one of the main kids just gets and in a very scary way dragged under the bed, never to be found again.
They're literally into the darkness.
Into some other world or something. Yeah, nails are carved into the floor, and it's just it's this thing trying to carry you off into wherever it's going to take you.
Old-fashioned,
Yeah, old-fashioned scares, old-fashioned childhood scares.
Done well, man.
Yeah. Then we come to the red spot, which ends up taking the sister off the board.
If it's not Harold, it's the red spot. That's the other one that everyone would always go to when talking about these books. It's the red spot.
Ginormous pimple that appears suddenly on this girl's face, grows to about the size of half of a baseball. And then she's poking at it and pulling at it, and a hair comes out, or what she thinks is a hair. And then all of a sudden, what ends up happening, it ends up being a spider leg.
Yep.
And hundreds, if not thousands, of spiders start jumping out of her face. And here's the red spot illustration.
Oh. See what I mean, Mike?
That's just horrific. There's just a giant hole in her face. And that's awful. For a children's book, that's just
it's the story. The story is the girl lays down and she thinks like the I don't remember the character's name, but the blonde, she just thinks it's a spider bite, and it just slowly gets bigger and bigger. And when you find out that the spider didn't just bite her, it laid an egg inside her, and that's where everything comes up. It's just
it's like a demented Charlotte's Web or something like that. Jesus. Then we get to and then there goes somebody else off the board. Then we get to the Red Room.
Yes.
And that was the one that got me the most. Hold on, we got a couple comments here. Patrick. Yeah, Nightmare Fuel. Definitely.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Now I personally am old enough where I'm not affected that way about it, but I remember sitting in that theater saying, "This is fucking freaky."
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is, because they really did generate, that, sort of memory from when you were a kid.
This was a great movie to see in the theaters. And if anyone listening or watching, if you haven't seen this, find it and watch it in your room in the dark. Yeah. This is a perfect movie to watch in the dark, which is why I was glad I saw it in theaters on the big screen, dark, the surround sound. Boom.
It's we should mention that it's streaming right now on Showtime. So if you want to watch it, it's there. It's available. It's streaming, and of course, I guess you could always pick it up for a rental on Amazon, or if you want to just watch it digitally, or if you ever want to just purchase it, it's a worthwhile purchase.
Yeah,
it's that good if you're a serious horror fan. So we get to the red spot. Now we get to the Red Room.
Yeah.
And somebody else goes off the board. And this was what got me.
Yes.
What the hell is that supposed to be?
That is from the story called The Dream. And it is about, just like the character, he keeps dreaming about a woman in a red room. Well, this is about a boy. I haven't read this one in a while, but I remember the illustration because that excuse my language, but that bitch right there looks just like the illustration. What it is the kid is just, the guy, he's falling asleep in a hotel, and he has a dream where that woman wakes up and says, "This is an evil place. You must flee." So that's her only part in the story. Right. So when I'm like, okay, this person is coming after this character in the movie, I'm like, okay, we get to see some more stuff. And then just the use of the red off of her pale white skin with the dark hair. I've said it before, I'm a color guy when it comes to film. If you have a great use of color, I'm hooked. And look at what you have on the screen right now. Perfect. And you have that sense of dread because she's slowly going after this character. And no matter where he turns, she's down that hallway.
Yeah, well, it's more. It seemed to be like he comes to a four-way intersection, and there's one in every intersection, and you there's nowhere to go.
There's no.
And I mean, this sort of special effect or costume design has Del Toro written all over it.
Right.
And she doesn't say anything, and she's just got this smile, and you're just you're just uncertain. Like what, you don't see any teeth, or you don't see any claws, or it just keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and there's no information.
Yeah. There's no blood. There's no nothing. It's just white, and it's just getting, and you can see it getting closer to you, and there's nowhere you can go.
Not good.
Every room you run into is red. Mike, do you have the image from the illustration again?
Yeah, hold on one second. Yeah.
And what I like about this here is in the story, as creepy as she looks, she speaks and she's trying to warn the character in the story. In here, she doesn't say a word, and she's not good. So I liked that little bit of a twist, you know what I mean, to the story.
See this drawing?
Yes.
You know what it reminds me of? It's a variation of Where the Wild Things
Are. Oh, okay. I don't see that. But
I don't know why, but when I first saw it, it reminded me of the characters from that. It's like the author took also children's images from children's books and then just put a slight slant to it. To me, that's what I'm thinking. I think that also goes into the childlike memory or child memories you might have in the back of your head. This is what I think also is well done in the movie, because the sense of impending danger or the sense of doom or all these different images that we remember as kids and seeing scary, and now that we're older, we're kind of laughing at it. But if we start seeing them now coming at us, we're going to go right back to when we were as a kid, or at least that's what they're setting up a bit. That you go right back to that terror. Yeah,
you can regress. Yeah, and we all did it a little bit, I think, watching this. Yeah. You also find out that the Sarabello characters has been falsely accused and convicted, so to speak, of this crime. That her own family set her up, her own family tortured her to get her to confess to these things. I mean, it's a real case of injustice. So you've got this very angry and vengeful sort of spirit who's just kind of lashing out. I mean, the kids really didn't do anything wrong, but she's taken out 3 of them.
Yeah.
She's not directing this toward, anybody that's actually wronged her, because it's too late for that.
Right.
She's just lashing out blindly at anybody that,
disturbs her slumber, or however you want to look at it.
Is within arm's reach, so to speak. Yeah. It's a hell of a thing. Now, finally, we get to Mitai Dowdy Walker.
Yep.
Which was just a freaky thing.
That there's only the only thing semblance of the Mitai Dowdy Walker story is that one is about the old man says, I'll pay anybody to stay the night in this haunted house, because supposedly every night at midnight a disembodied head will fall down the fireplace, which we get when the jangly man first makes his appearance.
Right.
That's the only connection. I mean, the rest of the story is, the guy says, "I'll take the bet." He shows up with his dog. You hear me tie Dodie Walker, and then the dog actually starts speaking back to it. The head falls down, the dog falls down dead, and then the guy gets scared. That's the only connection. The Jangly Man was made just for the movie.
Right.
It was effective.
Yeah. I mean, look at that. And like
it was effective.
like we said, that's a real contortionist moving around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad to know that now because, I've had this discussion before. There's something in your brain that I think realizes that you're looking at a person and not, a green screen.
That makes it scarier, in my opinion. The fact that someone can actually, I can't do it now, but contort my body into those movements. It makes a natural, movement for them so unnatural to us.
Well, I always think about Ridley Scott's Alien, where it was a man in a bodysuit.
Yeah.
Geiger's, invention, that was essentially a bodysuit that they designed. You think about the difference between, even watching, the old Godzilla movies, that original Gojira, that was a scary movie. It was a guy in a rubber suit.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that was, you were just like, oh shit, this is, this is kind of fucked up what's going on here with this, this black and white sort of thing, as opposed to now, where clearly that's some huge CGI monstrosity. Kong versus Godzilla and King of the Monsters. And I enjoy them. I actually own most of them. But you can tell that there's something in your brain that, lets you know that this is, a tangible thing happening here.
On the documentary I saw with Del Toro, he was talking about this creature because they wanted to give him more limbs, and, as a way of taunting the kid whose brother was in Vietnam, and they said, body parts home.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that made it look too fake, and they didn't want to CGI it. He made a conscious decision to.
Great decision.
Del Toro said that's not what we wanted to do. And
it's
the
amazing
that I agree. So that's when they found this contortionist to do.
It's amazing what you can do when you give a shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just leaving it to the guys in the room in the back.
Yeah, you're not just trying to tie off loose ends.
Yeah. No, that's why I've always, I've been, Mike, me, I'm a fan of like the slasher films of the 80s, and that's why I prefer them because of 99% of the time from that time, all practical. So there's a little bit of a connection knowing that was really done somehow instead of, clicking keyboards and moving stuff around.
Yeah.
Which I'm not knocking. It's a great skill, but practical effects, there's just something about them.
I think it was Rob Zombie who was saying that, and maybe I discussed this with both of you already, but his best use of CGI in his mind was Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, because he said when he first saw that, he's like, "Wow, they've really found a guy with no legs who can act."
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just such a minimal kind of thing to get rid of his legs. It wasn't the whole character. It wasn't, Thanos or, any of these other things, or Jar Jar Binks. It was just getting rid of this small piece of this guy's legs. Because at the time, he didn't know who Gary Sinise was back in, like, 94.
Right.
He was like, fuck, that guy can really act with them. They found a guy who can do that, that sort of thing. Yeah. It's supposed to be just this small, I think in the ideal sense, sort of assistant.
Mm-hmm.
This small tool that you use from time to time. It can't be the entire, the entire platform for your story, for your movie.
Yeah, you always bring up the Phantom Menace, and I think it was Rob who's like, why is Liam Neeson so awful in this movie?
Yeah,
because he's looking at a tennis ball.
Yeah, he's not trained to interact with a tennis ball.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said that. Was it him? He met one of the guys who is in Spy Kids. He was an extra in one of his movies or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said he was telling the story about the director wanted him to interact with like a tennis ball.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid he was a kid back then. He's like, well, who is he? Is he my dad? Is he, is he like the villain?
Right.
But some suit came onto the set and just said, well, go and do this. And he's like, I don't understand what you're asking me to do,
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, because one of these Spy Kids, there's 3 movies. The brother, he is actually the bully in the first Rob Zombie Halloween that Michael beats up and kills with the gigantic log.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's one of the Spy Kids when he's older.
Okay, that guy was a douche. He had it coming.
Yeah.
That guy was a fucking douche. When he fucking takes that guy's hat off his head and just hocks a loogie into it and throws it back at him. I'm like, you motherfucker, you've got it cut. Wait till he sees you coming. What a douche. Yeah, that movie was full of them, unfortunately. Jesus Christ.
And then if you go the opposite way with CGI, when Spielberg did Jurassic Park, he was explaining this is the head, this is the body. He was explaining how it was moving, so the actors got an easier time to follow with it.
Man, that movie still holds. That original movie still holds up.
Yeah, and that's almost what 30 years now.
Oh, I think it's a little. Yeah, it's got to be.
I think 93. I think.
Yeah,
okay, 93. So we're coming up on it. And that was another movie that straddled the line between a kids movie and a horror flick. Because when you saw that T-Rex go after those two kids,
that's right.
And you're like, holy shit. Yeah, man. Yeah. You had never seen anything like that before. And usually dinosaur movies, the effects were awful. This was at the time state of the art. And even today, those those velociraptors, the brontosaurus and the T-Rex, they all look legit.
Still hold up.
Yeah, and you're just like, fuck, man. Watching them go after those two kids, that was some scary shit. So, I mean, we come back to this. They kind of, I don't know if I'm glossing over it, if there are points you want to discuss, but I mean, eventually the issue gets resolved and they agree to tell this girl's story. And, as the expression goes in the movie, stories hurt and stories heal. So by being able to tell the true story of what happened to Sarah Bellows, she kind of will cease and desist. Her character itself, I didn't find to be all that scary necessarily, but maybe that wasn't the point. I think what she was doing was more scary.
Yeah, I think it was more her power was more scary than herself.
Yeah, than her appearance.
What she could do. Like, you still don't want to fuck with her.
No.
You know what I mean?
I mean, they needed to make that peace. Those kids needed to make that peace, so she was going to take all of them out.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it sort of resolves itself. Ramon goes off to Vietnam. My understanding is that it has been approved. It's officially in development. The sequel, it's officially in development. So
I'm glad because the way it ends, it's not to spoil too much, but we'll say a little bit. It seems like she's ready for a rescue mission to rescue her friends that were taken.
Yeah,
right.
And I'm ready to see how she does it because, how are we going to make these stories come back if Sarah's gone? And one thing I do want to say is, me and you, Mike, and I've said it on Night Watch's channel, we always kind of go to Stephen King. And in this film, when we find out Sarah's backstory, the real monsters are the humans.
Yeah.
Right.
What Sarah goes through, the torture, just because I won't spoil this, but because she knew what was going on. And what would happen to her to keep her quiet at first, and then to get her to confess, was awful.
Yeah, it's evil. Yeah, it's definitely evil.
It's like the Changeling, Michael, when we were talking about the one that the boy.
Yeah.
It's the children.
Yeah.
And their parents are the monsters, and it's the children who are striking back in revenge.
Yeah. Yeah. These aggrieved spirits who just can't rest because they've just been so wrongly treated in life. It makes for a compelling story because there are things you can relate to.
Exactly.
Not too much, hopefully. But I mean, what happened in The Changeling is just awful. That man murdered his own son, just because he was sickly. And it was just, he drowned him in a bathtub, and it's just. Have you seen that, Eric? The Changeling?
No, I know what happens, but I've heard it's one of the best atmospheric haunted house movies ever.
It's on Tubi, it's on Shudder. At any as much as I stress Stakeland or any of those, the Changeling, man.
I think me, I love to scroll through Tubi, and maybe I'll make that a first time watch for Halloween time.
So if you think the adult attacked the boy in Changeling, the adults attacked the girl here in this movie, the adults attack another little girl in Knives Out because they're bringing back Knives Out just to tick off Michael.
Joey
And-
Kives from the neighborhood. From the neighborhood.
But it's that sense of, you know, the innocence of the child or the innocence of the person.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, because if you notice all the characters in the movie who were the heroes, well, not even, I mean, even the jerk who got taken care of by Harold, there's a sense of innocence still about them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know. That's what I think also makes this work. It hits everybody at the core.
Yeah, because if you still think about it, you know, even Tommy, you know, the bully, he's still a kid.
Yeah.
And like we said, you know, it toes the line of PG-13. Seeing him, you know, coughing up the straw and all that stuff, that was cool and stuff. But I did not expect him to be stabbed with that pitchfork.
Yeah.
In this type of a film, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, boom, we got a ball game. We know all bets are off.
They really were going for it, and I was going to say right before you did, that, you know, what changed this movie and made it more intense. I mean, was that, you know, kids were getting taken off the board.
Mm-hmm.
There are only kids here that are being targeted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are no adults. That one cop.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, whoop-de-doo.
That one cop, and yeah, nobody liked him anyway. He was kind of a throwaway character. He's kind of a caricature.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, I mean that's what separates this movie from something like Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
They really are going for it. They're taking risks. They're taking off their main characters, you know, just in these awful ways.
Yeah.
Without gore.
Nope.
Right.
Without gore. They're not doing gory, bloody things. They're not beheading, and, you know, knives aren't flying all over the place, and you know, people aren't, you know, being, you know, tormented, you know, very much. I mean, in the Sarah story, there you hear it, but I mean, it's still awful.
Yeah.
It's still, you're like, oh, that's okay, yeah, all right. Like when the pale lady embraces. And just kind of absorbs that one boy. You're like, oh, that's.
I know. It's just unnerving and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if they went the other way, if they went with something bloody, I don't think it would be as good.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. Because a lot of this movie is just atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creepiness. You know, you can be creepy without blood and guts.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think. That's why when the one kid gets absorbed by the white woman,
mm-hmm.
you know, I said, of course he's going to. That's exactly what's going to happen.
And what I liked is I think, well, obviously that scene was CGI. I don't know if the whole woman was to be, but they didn't go the route, like the cheesy route of like the jaw opening and her just, you know, swallowing whole. No, she hugged him, and soon he was gone.
Yeah. Yep.
That's something you didn't expect, and that's an image that sticks with you.
Sticks with you in the head. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, right now it's broadcasting on Showtime. I'll say it one more time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have Showtime, it's worth catching. If you want to pay $3.99 on Amazon, it's worth it. If you want to buy it on DVD or Blu-ray, it's worth it.
Yeah, I got it on Blu-ray, and this is the perfect movie, in my opinion, to watch around, if it's not Halloween, but at least like the fall season. It works perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like Eric said, make sure you watch it in the dark without interruptions.
Yes. Put down the phone.
Yeah.
Put down anything that will distract you. I mean, get your popcorn or whatever you want, your drinks, whatever you want, but sit down, watch it in the dark, face on the, eyes on the screen the whole time.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I think that this is as good a place as any to kind of bring this to a close. We've been going for a little bit over an hour, and I think that we've done a good job here.
Yeah.
Is there any?
To Michael Lipford for the double take.
Yeah. It's far from work, man. It's far from work.
Mm-hmm.
So
we do it because we like to talk movies, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's a labor of love. So
it's got to be love. Mike's not paying us to like it.
Yeah, it's exactly right. That's exactly right. In fact,
I'm appreciative of that Mike's getting what he pays for with us, right?
That's right.
I appreciate it too. I appreciate all you guys.
We know.
Okay. That will be it for tonight. We will be back. We're not done. We're not doing a triple feature tonight, but we will be back tomorrow. Yeah, I'm back in another hour. Back at midnight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 when Bill and I and Doug cover the Robert Eggers classic, The Witch, which is just a powerhouse. One of the best horror movies of the century so far, I'd say, in the last 20 years. Again, another 824 Grand Slam. It's a fuck all of a movie, and that is also available on Showtime right now. I own it on Blu-ray, but I happen to have Showtime, so I'm too lazy to go up to the shelf and pull it off there. So I can just finagle my remote control and pull up the Showtime and watch it that way. I can't wait to dig into that movie, but we'll be here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock to do that. So that I'm very much looking forward to, and that's how we're going to close out the week. I think we did a really good job with our Halloween selections for the month. We've still got some really solid ones coming up. We've got Wolf coming up. Yep. We've got The Legend of Hell House coming up. Yep. We've got The Others coming up. And we've got Silver Bullet coming up. So, I mean, we haven't even done The Witch yet. So we're not even halfway there. Thanks again to Eric from Hey Internet Eric here.
Always a pleasure, man. Really is.
And the everyman Joe Crow back with us once again in the house. Everybody, thank you.
Where the call comes from.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, once again. And thank you to Patrick for stopping in the comments. Did we miss any comments here? Hold on. E.G. Marshall in Creep Show, he said real quick. And he has bought a copy. So, okay, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. Good night, everyone. And in the meanwhile, as I've said before, don't waste your time with bullshit. Take care.
Cheers.